In yesterday's video, I showed how to take this transmission out of the tractor. I rinsed it off with a hose, and today I cleaned it up. If you have a pressure washer, that'd be the best way to go. But right now I have 3 pressure washers that I'm Frankensteining together to get one good one out of. So what I used, and I'm not recommending this, so be careful, and I'm doing this with a table that's outside. What I used was gas from tractors that I picked up. I used a toothbrush and a brass brush to clean it up. This is just a quick tip. This is a handy tool. It's a toothbrush that I cut the head off and put a little angle on. This is really good when you're working on carburetors, when you're getting into parts. You don't want to use a screwdriver because you don't want to scratch the metal. Plastic, it doesn't hurt anything. Anyway, back to this. I removed this pulley, and this pulley requires a 7/8 socket. Pulley comes off, and you want to take this off and not lose it. Remember how it goes on. Okay, I'm not removing this gear. See, everything's turning the way it should. The problem with this, like I mentioned in the first video, is that it skips and jumps out of gear. I pulled all the bolts out. I didn't open it yet, and you want to make sure that all the bolts are the same size, so when you put them back in, you don't have any issues. Here so I don't lose them. Under here you have a compression spring and a ball detent, and when you're shifting whether to go forward or reverse or neutral, this goes in and out, and there's a ball in there that moves around. I was able to get a diagram online, a parts diagram, so that was very helpful. It gives me an idea of what I'm going to find when I get in here. I'm going to put this camera down and open this up now. I did leave the brake on, and I might have to take it off to clean it up. I'm not sure yet. And these bolts, they require a 3/8 socket for them. Let's see if this is just going to pop open. Oh, this comes right open. Look at this. Okay, this is what we have. I'm going to try and do this without ruining the camera, so you got to bear with me with the moving around, the jumping around. This looks like water got on the inside of this. It looks a little too wet for me. This is where it gets attached to the lever when you want to get into gear, whether it's forward or reverse or neutral. When this fork goes back and forth, it pushes this clutch collar. And just give you an idea, if you never did this before, here's where the pulley goes. When it turns, it's turning this shaft. This shaft is turning the gear that you see moving down below. That gear fits in between these 2 gears, and it's always turning. One goes one way, one goes the other way. When it's in neutral, nothing's moving. When you shift, it's either going to go forward or reverse. If I'm not mistaken, I think this is forward. Now, why is it jumping out of gear? I'm going to lift this up. I don't know if I'm going to have to take the brake off to do it. I'm going to lift this up to see if any of these gears, well, maybe I could just turn it. I'm checking to see if any of these gears are chipped. From what I saw in the illustration, it's a 42 tooth gear. Say that fast a few times. Okay, I don't see anything. Nothing looks wrong on this side. Let me get this out of here. And you're going to need plenty of rags for this, however you clean it out. And this is a time when I wish I had a parts cleaner. Yeah, I don't see anything on that. I don't see any problem there. Maybe it's down in here. Okay, I have to put this camera down. And on the diagram, under here there should be a spring and a ball. Okay, now I think I did it. There's supposed to be a ball that goes over here. I don't know what I was thinking. I thought it was underneath, but it's on top. There's the spring, but I lost the wait. Oh, I lost the ball. And like I said, I'm working outside, so I don't know if I'm gonna find it over here. I don't even know how it came out with all that grease in there. Well, I'm gonna clean my hands up, shut this camera off, see what I could find, and show you the results. This hand's cleaner. Okay. Using this magnet I got out of a microwave, I was able to find that little ball that goes in here. Anyway, I found what the issue was. If you look at this gear, I cleaned it up in some gas. You see how it's shiny? The camera might not be picking up the wear, but you can see where there's a shine on it. Well, I was looking for wear on the outside gears, but the wear was on the inside gear. You have this fork assembly that moves this clutch back and forth to either neutral, forward, or reverse. You can also see the shine, the wear on the edge of this gear. And the way this works, pushed into the gear as it's turning, so it'll move, but I have to hold it in gear, otherwise it pops out. The reason it pops out is because it's worn. Now, what caused this wear? Is it not engaging all the way? There's little washers, thrust washers, and washers that push it in. Maybe they wore down. I don't know. Tractor is pretty old. Maybe it was being shifted without stepping on the brake. And you can see wear on this also, where that little ball is, well, it goes this way. You can also see the wear on this fork assembly. See where it's shiny like that? That it sits in here, and there's that little ball that goes in there. And from sliding back and forth, I have several other tractors that have different issues, but unless that deck gives me a hard time, this will be the easiest one for me to get on that lawn. I want to stay ahead of the lawn. And over here, this is fine. Everything on here is okay. I checked this out. No wobble in the shaft, so whatever gears are in here are fine. Like I said, I'm just going to clean it up. And what I'm going to do, because this is hard for me to hold the camera and work on it, I'm going to just show you a diagram on what goes where. And then I kind of, well, maybe I'll do this now. Let's see. Yeah, getting grease on everything here. This is the diagram I got offline. So when this goes back in, you have this flange bearing, and you have these two shims over here. And looks like nothing on this side of it. And we're over here. And here's the bearing. And I see one shim. According to the diagram, there's two shims. And oh, there's the other one. Now, these shims aren't that thick. Is it possible that over the course of time, they just wore out? I don't know. This tractor has some mileage on it. Somebody could have been shifting without stepping on the brake. That could have done it also. But like I said, I'm going to clean it up somewhat, put it back together. And I did say in the last video, I was going to show you how to pull that spring back. And what else we have here? We have these flange bearing. We have the flange bearing. We have the shims. So, we have the shims. And what else we have? We have this fork assembly. The ball, the compression spring didn't come out. That's still in. And we have these, it says it's sealed, but I don't see any seal on here. That could be a problem too. Maybe that's why it was leaking. I don't know if anybody was ever in here before. It's hard to tell. But according to this diagram, there should be the washer, the shim, washer, shim, and the seal. But I don't, unless they're counting this bearing as part of a seal. I don't know. Anyway, let me clean this up, get it back together, and I'll be back. I have this back together, and I just want to point out a few things. I called MTD up because there wasn't any gasket or any sealant around this edge. And I called to see whether something should be there, and they said no. So this is just metal on metal. I don't know if you want, I don't know if it would hurt if you put a bead of sealer on it or not. That's one. Two, when you put this back together and you put your brake on, don't forget to seal between the brake disc and the body. Another thing, if you look real close on this bushing, there's like a little nipple over here where there's a cutoff in the body where that nipple fits in. And this bushing has a straight side to it. You want to make sure that's in right, because if it's up the wrong way and you clamp it down, you'll crack this casting. I'm assuming it would crack. It's only aluminum. On this side, you have this washer, the thrust washer. You have the bushing and the seal. On this side, and I called MTD about this, on this side is only this washer. So I don't know if it's missing. They weren't quite sure when I called them. And again, I don't know if somebody was in this once before. It doesn't look like it. And on this end, you have the other bushing and the washer. And I mentioned earlier that there wasn't a seal over here. I'm not quite sure if this bushing is acting as a seal, because the shaft isn't protruding to put a seal on. It looks like there's space for it. Nothing there. There's that. When you're putting it back together, don't forget to put this ball detente in here. There's a spring under this and the ball. And what that does, it keeps this fork assembly in place so it doesn't shift back and forth on its own. You have these two gears. I ordered the gear, but for now I just switched it. Forward is reverse, reverse is forward. So at least I'll have forward gear to cut this grass. And then you have the clutch collar, which I switched that around too because that showed a little wear. And the way this works is when you have it in the middle, it's a neutral. This would be forward. This would be reverse. And this transmission doesn't affect the speed. The speed gets adjusted by the pulley that's under the tractor. That's a whole different setup altogether. On the hydraulic transmissions, it affects the speed. On this particular transmission, it doesn't. So I think I covered all the bases on this. Everything's put up. I don't know how much oil is supposed to go in here, but I'm going to fill it just below the edge, and that should be more than enough to get into everything. I'm going to have to do this again with the camera off. I'm going to lift this up, pull this bushing out. It should seep there by itself, but I'm going to apply the grease oil right on the shaft under the bushings. So for now, I have to get the grease in here, button it up, and then back onto the tractor. This is just a little demo on how these gears work. Right now, this transaxle is upside down. On this side, on the bottom side here, is where the pulley would be. So this, when this pulley turns, it turns that pinion gear. And this is in neutral now. And you see, this is these two gears, the bevel gears, they're always turning, but nothing's happening. When you push it into drive, it's pushing the clutch over. Now when you turn it, you can see this gear turning, and then it'll turn the axle. Take it out of gear, and again, nothing's happening. Put it in reverse, and now she'll be going in reverse. And that's it. So I'm going to So now I'm going to add the grease to this, button it up, and we'll get it back onto the tractor. Well, I have this transmission put together and I have it on. It's not fully connected yet. I'm running into a little difficulty with the two bolts that go in here. This is the one that gave me a little difficulty getting them out. Just trying to get this lined up. It seems like when I push it up, it's over to one side. Just pointing that out. And I'm going to be wrapping this up. But I did say I was going to show you how I stretch the spring out. And I use the same method on deck springs. What you do is get a piece of wire or a rope, hook it onto the spring, run it to where it's got to go, and a little tough trying to hold the camera and getting everything going here. Once you have it hooked, you can either put a screwdriver in here, you can use a tie iron, whatever you have on hand. This happens to be the pipe for the jack. And just pull it. Pull it to where it's got to go. Once it's on, if you can't get the string out, just cut it and pull it right out. That's how you get the spring on and off, and just about any one of the springs on the tractor, you could do the same way. Well, all I have left is to get those 2 bolts in, put the ties on. The transmission's working. It shouldn't be jumping out of gear, and the reason I know it's working, I connected a drill to it, and I made sure the axle was able to go forward and reverse. Whether it jumps out of gear, we'll see. My biggest concern is that they don't have any sealant between the 2 halves of the transmission. I find that kind of odd, but we'll see what happens. And I just used a little under a quart of that 00 grease. I'm not sure if it's enough, too much, but time will tell. So that's it for now. If you have any questions or comments, post them down below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe. And not to miss any of my new videos as I upload them, be sure to hit that notification bell. And until next time, everyone, stay safe.